welcome into another edition of Small Business Banter. Today, really pleased to have in Ed Scott, who is the founder of Resolve, which is a small, medium enterprise marketplace, somewhere where you go to buy and sell businesses. So, Ed, thank you so much for taking time to come in and talk to us today about both your journey as a founder and most importantly, about the sale and acquisition of small businesses, which you're entrenched in.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Look, it's great to have you. It's a very topical discussion, leading edge in terms of your technology and your understanding of this critically important marketplace where the livelihoods of small business owners is realised if it's done well. So what we're going to chat about today, we're going to take some time to talk to you about your own journey as a founder. And Resolve is a new business that you started. We'll talk about the motivation for starting that. We'll also get into something that's incredibly topical, the critical importance of a successful transfer or sale of a small business. We're going to talk about how and why you got involved. We're going to talk about this marketplace generally for the buying and selling of small businesses, very misunderstood. And we're going to tap into your expertise and ask you about how existing owners and sellers of businesses and also buyers can, what they can do better to ensure that they get out or into the right small business. So hope you're comfortable with all that, Ed. It's a bit of a mouthful.
Looking forward to it. Let's dive into.
All right. So how about you just give us a couple of minutes on Ed Scott and how you got to resolve.com.au.
Sure. Well, I won't pretend that my story's remotely interesting, but I hail from New Zealand, an expat. I was born and bred in New Zealand, moved to Australia for university and finished in the US and moved back to Australia for work, for my first job. And through that process, after a graduate program, ultimately ended in the corporate strategy and M&A team, where I first was exposed to the buying and selling of businesses or large assets. And ultimately, I suppose, one with a relatively generic commercial degree, it wasn't an immediately apparent or obvious career path. So I was very fortunate to get into a grad program and then learn about M&A. And so I thought, well, if this is going to be my career, why not try and do it on my own balance sheet? And if it doesn't work out, well, then I'll be one step closer to finding out what my career calling is. At that time, thinking that there probably was more a calling rather than, serendipitous opportunities or sliding doors. And so that was the genesis of Resolve. Ultimately, I went searching for a small business, particularly a manufacturing business or a rail servicing business, and ultimately bought thirds of a Chinese restaurant in Melbourne, in the city there, and me and two others, we that was after 10 months of searching. And so, I'd met with just about every business broker that I could find in the phone book, looked through newspapers. I didn't really want to buy a business out of a newspaper in 2014, 2015.
But there was some still available, right, advertised at that time, which is,
Occasionally this time too, yeah, absolutely. It is somewhat ironic that little businesses are advertised in the obituary section of the newspaper because perhaps that's where the method of
place.
Yeah. Well, maybe that method of trying to sell the business in the newspaper should go to a grave, but that's what Resolve is vying to lead to. And so through that search process, I just tried to find a business, and ultimately we started going directly to vendors. Which, much to my surprise, realised that vendors are open to, or more open than I expected them to be to my approach. But two vendors I wasted a lot of time with, several months, and then ultimately neither of them were high conviction sellers. That that they liked the idea of it, they just couldn't let go of their baby, and I couldn't blame them. But I gave myself 6 months to find a small business to buy, and which I thought would be plenty of time. It shows my level of ignorance. And then, it obviously wasn't plenty of time, and it was hard to find. So I ultimately ended up in a Chinese restaurant. And then pretty quickly, soon thereafter, after 18 months or so, came time to exit the business, and I didn't know how to sell the business, what it was worth, or really had no idea who to trust to sell it for me. And those are different symptoms for the same problem, which is a failing market, where a failing business successions market or business sales market. Probably due to the absence of a single place for supply and demand to connect. So ultimately, at its core, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, so you lived and breathed the life of both a small business buyer and a small business seller, and you talked about all the things that are so much a part of this frustrating experience that a lot of buyers and sellers have. But that's a great place for you, and it was obviously interesting enough for you to then start Resolve. I know you did you've done other things and continue to do other things, including being a part owner or a director of a private business. But it was enough for you to want to start a marketplace. So can you tell us about what resolve.com.au is right today, what its primary function is, and where you're hoping to take Resolve?
Yeah, sure. So Resolve's primary function is to play the connectivity role. It's simply to intermediate vendors to market, or bring vendors to market and help them search, find and engage a sale advisor with relevance to their business. And then when the sale advisor is ready to market the business to buyers, we give them a single view to buyers. And so essentially Resolve is a website, throw away all the glorified terms. We're a website where people can come and search, or people come to search and browse businesses for sale or businesses they can buy, and inquire, sign an NDA, and start corresponding with the sale advisor directly on the platform. And on the platform is a secure data room or folder where confidential documents can be shared. And on the sales side, sale advisors can market businesses, publish listings, and populate the data room, and customize the sales workflow so that if Joe Bloggs or Jane Smith comes across, inquires in the listing, their profile looks like X or fits the model of Z, and they've signed the NDA, could immediately release the teaser to them, for example. And then,
so a teaser is that's like a one-page summary of a business opportunity, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. Some people might call it a light, IM light, or a teaser, one-pager, exec summary. But essentially, it should tell you a little more than what's on the classified ad, what's in the newspaper ad, and then they should be able to frame a point of view as to whether they're interested and would like to proceed.
What level or size of businesses do you cater for?
We have two verticals. So by and large, the majority of businesses that we support or intermediate going concerns valued 1 million to 40 million enterprise value. So above the micro businesses that are typically characterized, what that Seek business would be characterized by, I suppose, and below the middle market that private equity play in, which is the largest segment of the market by gross transaction value. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you add up the number of businesses valued 1 million to 40 million and apply a median value and multiply that by the average business broker fee and aggregate that pool, sum up that quantum, that pool of transaction fees is the largest across micro businesses, institutional and middle market. And so that's the market we play in. But it's also really interesting because you find some hidden gems that, for example, relatively recently it was about 6 months ago, we had a business come through the pipeline that makes toilet rolls. And of course, everyone uses toilet rolls. I just never thought that there would be an Australian business that's making toilet rolls. I'd never thought about it. And, it's a profitable business. So things like that are unsexy, overlooked, people are unsure how to sell, they make great buying opportunities. And that's what we're excited to I suppose, democratize or open up to everyone.
Yeah, okay. Democratization is. I like that term.
I didn't actually mention the second business vertical because I forgot. Sorry. And the second is urgent sale campaign. So that might be a recapitalization. It might be a fractional sale, or it might be a business that's in external administration.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of making this accessible, this platform, I do want to get into. Let's start with what do you think is wrong with the way it's done currently? Because there's a couple of things you mentioned. You've started a few years ago. So and there's a number of existing large players. I wonder, your motivations, how you see you can do it differently, and then let's start with that because it's such a for the owner of a business worth between $1 and $40 million, a lot of their wealth is tied up in that business, most likely. And so realising that is incredibly important.
Yeah, that's right. It's super important. So and it's important at a macro level too, at the government level. because 7 out of 10 people in the workforce are employed by a small or private business that's worth between 1 and 200 or 1 and 199 employees, so small to medium-sized business. And so if there's no liquid market for these businesses to sell in, well, these people that are employed there are vulnerable to loss, because ultimately the business owner may have little option, no option but to shut down the business and sell it off as pieces in order to retire. Yep. So coming back to your question, there are a few large operators. I've already mentioned one, which is a career website that have a micro business sale portion of their site, so Seek.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think they do that because, I'm guessing here, but because it's a career pathway, and they're the single stop for anyone that's looking to do something with their career, whether it's starting out or buy their own business.
Yeah, so be in a job and maybe buy a job.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And so they do a great job. I mean, they're enormous. They've probably got, I wouldn't have a clue, but I'd guess 20,000 listings at any one time.
Yeah, I think they do about that, maybe a little under, but I look at it regularly.
Okay. So there you go. And so that was around when I was searching for a business. And so there's a handful or even more other relatively homogenous, similar style classified websites. But Seek Business is the clear leader in that space. It's probably a participation strategy for them. But my point is, they existed when I was searching for a business, and I still struggled to find a business. Now, I don't pertain to be good at anything, but I'm not shy in rolling my sleeves up and applying some elbow grease. And so that degree of hustle was somewhat meaningless in the search for businesses, and that told me that there's a problem. Now, every now and then I'll use a big word, and often I don't know what it means, like democratization. But ultimately, I probably don't overthink what we're doing differently relative to existing operators, because in my mind's eye, the market that I see isn't existing today. It doesn't exist today. And so really, what are we trying to do? We just want people to know where the place is to go to for anything that relates to buying a private business, almost a private business network, similar to Yellow Pages, for example. And so whether that is, you might be looking to find a sale advisor to help you sell, or you might want to sell your business directly, or you might want to buy a business or invest in a business. Now, we don't provide services for all of those types of people, but it's a place to start. And ultimately, if we butter our bread correctly in the SME space, and by that I mean get sufficient listings and have adequate number of high fidelity buyer leads inquiring in listings, so that sellers are getting good traction. And then we tell people about use cases and use testimonials and endorsements and marketing to grow awareness. Well, we should start to attract buyers to the market. So I suppose, what have we done differently? Well, we've raised venture capital for starters, and that's allowed us to fund our growth without having to monetize both the sell and buy side, which others around the world and in Australia have tried to do, and that's constricted their growth. But there's nothing hugely innovative about what we do. I suppose we just take great care in what we do and try to make it really easy, and much to in contrast to my interview this morning, or what I'm saying this morning, break down the vernacular and don't use big words, because the buyer market should be anyone that's got a business or wants to invest $1, whether they're looking at real estate, residential real estate, or ETFs or private business, and that's where we want to get to.
Okay, you did talk about the concept of a marketplace, but you've got brokers that give you listings, you've got owners that come to you, and you've got buyers also coming along saying, what have you got? A lot of the existing and traditional business listing sites are very, very much or mainly about brokers advertising what they have on their books. But you talked about having owners coming directly to you. Is that quite a big proportion of the number of businesses you've got listed, or are you seeing more owners saying, I've got to get out? What do I do? Talk to you?
We are seeing more owners say that, absolutely. I don't know if that's relative to the number of owners that were looking for a solution a couple of years ago, or whether it's simply reflective of our awareness being slightly more than what it was last month and the month before that. So
you are investing heavily in creating awareness, aren't you, as a startup brand or as a newish brand?
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of plays to an earlier question you asked, where do I see us? I'd like Resolve to be in a real estate.com.au or, car sales or domain of the business sales market. So everyone knows, at the mainstream level, that if you're thinking of buying a business or selling a business, well, just start with Resolve, and that should be the start and end of your journey, hopefully with a good ending. So that's Resolve. We're spending a significant amount in awareness, yes, and part of that awareness, roughly a third of the budget will be continuing to go towards originating new vendors or bringing vendors to market. And that includes resources so that people can inform themselves and understand, various options in terms of selling a portion, selling all of it, raising capital, bringing in vendor financing a buyer, whatever it may be, searching, finding, and ultimately engaging an advisor, a licensed business broker or M&A advisor. And that's great for the intermediaries because a lot of people will bag business brokers or M&A advisors, but ultimately the business broking market is so hard because no one knows where to find buyers or sellers. There's not a single place you can look for an industry or for sector or for size or location. And so what we're simply trying to do at its core is take a little bit of money from each listing in the form of a listing fee, pull that together, fund marketing to scream from the rafters so that potential buyers know that we're here, bring those through, ask lots of questions, demonstrate or act on our humility to really unpack the problems that a buyer has or their perceived questions or problems, and grease those wheels so that transactions can happen at a relatively subscale while we're relatively young, and then promote the success stories to bring new buyers to market.
And new sellers, yeah?
Certainly new sellers. So I think there's probably, roughly 40% of businesses out there that would entertain the idea of selling tomorrow.
Look, I reckon it's even higher. It's one of those things, getting owners to take the step to selling. There's a whole lot of things we could drill into, and you discovered from making direct approaches to vendors because you couldn't see the right kind of businesses listed for sale. That's just evidence that there's a lot of businesses out there that haven't done anything about selling. And we day to day, I talk with owners, and there's a reluctance, there's a distrust, there's a misunderstanding. They know that exit planning and selling is, the older they get, the more they need to think about it. A lot of them don't do anything about it. And so, the existing marketplaces, or the ones that have been prevalent for the last 10 years, it's a mishmash of different businesses, and it's kind of like, let's put an ad out and hope for the best. But I'd like to think that that's what you've got to work with as a business broker. I'm a business broker, but I think there's also what I'm hearing here is getting owners to engage. They might come to you, and you refer them off to an advisor. But it's so important to get some external advice about selling, your potential, the timeframes involved. Even if you don't want to hear this, but if they didn't do anything about it, it kind of advances their understanding of what's involved and ultimately how they may or may not crystallise the wealth they have tied up in their business. So it's I think the marketplace concept it's got a long way to run, and it is going to be a case of bringing together and more closely the buyers and sellers of businesses.
Totally. Just on that, I totally agree with everything you've said, and that's actually been a learning. So we've been doing this more than 6 years, and people, how old is a startup before it should have started? I can't answer that question, but I'd argue we're still a startup 6 and a bit years into it. For me, the reflection or the insight is there's a lot of tacit knowledge that you need to have in order to improve the outcome of your conversation. So business owners don't want to be made to feel like an EBITDA multiple, for example. And there's a lot of people...
If they know what that is, right?
Totally right. Yeah. And so you've got to navigate these conversations with patience, care, empathy, because, a business owner is smarter than the ordinary Joe, but everyone's just... comfortable with what they play in every day. And so if they're not dealing with EBITDA multiples every day or adjusting P&Ls to add back marketing or whatever questionable add back that they might be told to add, there is a lot of trust involved, and that's because there's a small number of buyers. So, well, not that's because, but there is a small number of buyers, and so until there's more buyers, vendors will somewhat incorrectly assume that their business needs to be perfect to put up for sale, and the preparation of getting it ready for sale is a future sale problem. But then ultimately a potential recession looms, or interest rates go up, and then they think, oh shit, if I want to sell in the next 5 years, I need to get ahead of this tidal wave. Let me do it now. And suddenly, they might come across some complications. So there is certainly a need for education resources. But I suppose my key point, what I wanted to make here, is it's not simply a matter of marketing budget and a technology platform to connect them, because those are components, but the tacit knowledge and the soft skills and conversations that need to be had with vendors and buyers and financiers to that point are what will make this market work or not.
Yeah, look, the transfer of a business worth a couple of $1 million can be just as rich and complex as the sale of a $20 or $40 million business, and there's no discount for size. It's the same. Your legal costs, your preparation costs, the analysis that needs to be done to explain the business is just the same. So for owners, selling my business is a bit like selling a house. Tidy it up, and when I'm ready, I'll put it on. And it's just not like that. And that's the opportunity for yourself and for me, as a broker to kind of get to more owners and talk about creating options. Right, this is very much about getting a deeper understanding of what your business really might be worth. Is the timing good enough? Are there buyers for your industry? There's a whole lot of things that make it so much more complex. You can clear a house. I reckon you can clear a house in a week or a month, and you might knock the price down a bit, but you're going to clear it. It's just not the same with businesses. So do you have any sense of how many businesses are for sale? They talk about, I think 2.5 million small, medium enterprises in Australia. I think the belly, probably 60, 70% of those are very, micro. So let's say you're left with 800,000, 600,000. So out of that pool, how many businesses might be for sale at any one time?
That's a good question. Data is hard to come by, and probably, it's a symptom of the absence of a single marketplace. There's asymmetry of information, but relying on the ABS, they'll say there's slightly over 2.6 million businesses that are registered. 1.5 million of those have employees. So what's that? 1.1 don't. Of the 1.5, so that's the addressable market, businesses with employees. Of course, it's not going to be
from 1 to 20, or they're 1 to 19, I think, isn't it? So.
Yeah, that's right. But even a business with 25 employees would be precluded or excluded from that. 1 to 19 employees. So and a business with 25 employees still might be turning over 12 million, make 780, 900, whatever, $1,000 a year. So it is somewhat a blunt instrument, the number of employees. But in our space, I estimate 350,000 businesses in that small to middle market, enterprise value roughly 1 million to 40 million, with the edges somewhat blurred. But there's let's say 1.5 million businesses that have employees that should have some value. Of course, there may be some more, because some companies might have several business units and they've divest one. But let's rough numbers 1.5. The average business tenure is roughly 8 years, or deemed in US papers to be 8 years, according to a research report that I can't rattle off the citation now, but I've recently done our pitch deck, so I've cited on that one.
That's good.
8 years, which is 12.5%. 12.5% of 1.5 million. Let's go 10% is 150,000 businesses a year. So I think that's the addressable market in an average year. Now, as we've referenced already, there's circa 20 to 45% of businesses that are open to selling. I think at some point MGI Institute said that did a study that's found high 60s or low 70s percentile of business owners would seriously consider selling if approached. Now, that's an enormous market. So let's say there's a bubble that might reflect 30 or 40% of businesses that if a buyer came to them or there was a clear solution for them to sell, they would be interested. So, it's anywhere from 100,000 businesses to 900,000 businesses that may sell.
So implications for business buyers. You've really got to know the kind of business you're after, because that's the big numbers, and as a seller, it probably points back to the same kind of points we raised earlier, which is about getting a sense of what a sale process would look like, what's it worth, earlier than later. I mean, I sound like a broken record, but what I keep coming back to is, if you've got a lot of that of your wealth, and not just wealth, if you've got a lot of owners, there's a lot more to their business than just the wealth tied up in it. It is purpose, it is legacy, it is having a business where you have your good days and your bad days, but it kind of underpins your life for 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Oh, mate. Along with your kids, it's your heartbeat. You care about your team. You want them to continue on if you exit. You want the brand to flourish. You want your suppliers to be looked after, your customers to be happy. 100%. Businesses are entirely emotional, despite all the best business books saying that you shouldn't make your business emotional. But you're coming to a point which is a great one, and no one talks about it, and that is people need to be specific about what they're looking for, because otherwise you'll never find something. And another point that private equity often don't talk about, or the best fund managers don't talk about, but which is a key point in determining your IRR or ROI as an investor, i.e. your return, is the opportunity cost. If you're looking for a business to buy, because if you're looking for something that's absolutely perfect, well, you might never find it. The chances are you won't find it. But a business doesn't need to be perfect. Ultimately, we're all humans, and businesses are supplied by humans and service humans. And so consumer behavioral economics is the key point to understanding whether the business has a future, irrespective of generative AI or other potential disruptive forces. And so if you're a buyer, am I buying a house in a cul-de-sac, north-facing backyard, close to public transport? What are the equivalents for businesses? Is it an industry that you're interested in or you've previously got experience in? Is it trying to minimize your blind spots? Is it, for your risk appetite to have recurring revenues so that the business is predictable? Whatever it may be. And so the more specific you can be, the shorter your search is likely to be, and that in turn reduces your opportunity cost. Much less helps those who are advising you or introducing deals to introduce deals that actually relate, as opposed to casting the net too wide.
The businesses that run under management that have really healthy profits that are for sale are few and far between. So you're right. You've got to look to businesses that match up to whatever you think your strengths are, and maybe you get some independent assessment of what your strengths are. But not sticking with your knitting, but going. You've got to go with your strengths. And as you say, they're not going to be perfect, but what they are is often. You talked about the toilet paper one there. They're just sort of like out there, obscure, just doing their thing, not perfect. Most of them we can go in as advisors and say, well, you should do this, and that. But they're a running start, and there's a lot of in buying something vis-a-vis starting up, right? You're running a startup. I've been in a startup, and there is another way for some people, and it's called buying like an unglamorous, pretty solid, good bones small business. And
you'd have rocks in your head to start a business. What do you think? Buy or build? Why would you spend the stress? I 6.5 years haven't paid myself $1. I've got 2 young kids and a married. It's hard and it's uncertain, and we're nowhere near the finish line. So, and then ultimately, your business, if you take on money, it might take a form that doesn't necessarily reflect your founding vision or outlook philosophy. So, you're right. If you can buy a business that's got suppliers in place and contracts in place, and where the next dollar is coming from tomorrow, great.
Yeah, you buy it Monday. The phone's ringing, and there's a lot. So we're in violent agreement there. Can I just get your take on? And let's assume we've got some small business owners out there who haven't done anything about looking to sell their business. They don't know who to turn to, quite sure how, what the process is, who to trust. What's your kind of plea to them to help kind of progress from a dangerous position, which is you don't know what you don't know, to at least knowing what you don't know?
Yeah. I would hazard a guess that people that have been business owners for more than 3 or 4 years are acutely aware of not specifically their blind spots or us blind spots, but that we have blind spots, because a business is a really humbling thing that it kick you in the nuts one day, it can hit you one day and you'll be punching the air the next. But I think, and I also don't plead. I'm a little too philosophical in terms of wanting people to do their own research, because I don't want to sit here sounding like a snake oil salesman spruiking our own wares. Ultimately, search, find, and see and speak to your accountant or your lawyer or both, and some friends if you've got any business owners that amongst your friend group. LinkedIn, it's certainly not my style to post things and bang your chest about marketing or putting public questions on a forum such as LinkedIn, but that is also a really good way, even if you privately message a business owner, to ask them how they sold their business. But
it is a very sensitive area. Yeah.
It's totally right. I'd encourage you to add to one of your research avenues, resolve.com.au. At Resolve, you can, on the homepage, there's a link there you can fill out a form thinking of selling your business, and there's 5 or 6 fields. What's your desired timeline to exit, what industry you're in, roughly what size, and there's an indicator of revenue or profit or EBITDA. Does the business have a GM in place or not? Is there commercial property that could be sold with a business or not? And so no identifying information. Based on that information, we recommend brokers with relevant expertise. And now that's not to say that's not a fully comprehensive list. So there are business brokers that could be very relevant to the business that you've got and great to sell your business that aren't shown on our results. But, we're working towards having the Bible or the comprehensive guide on sale advisors. And
like a match, it is matchmaking in it.
Yeah. It's like Find My Agent, the proposition for vendors. They don't pay for us. The broker would pay for us. And then when the broker's ready to market to buyers, we make sure that the business is comprehensively canvassed across the strategic buyer audience. What does that mean? Well, who are the people that are likely to value your business the highest because they can extract value in ways that others can't? And so that's what we specialize in. And there's a whole lot of fancy words or long words there, but, you don't go to your neighbor. Your neighbor might be able to pay more for your house than what someone who's not in the area, because, if they were to knock down the fence in both properties, they could build a development and the property might get more yield. So it's a similar sort of thinking.
That's getting inside the head of the potential buyer, because they've all, as much as we want to kind of define what a business might be worth, it's just a major flaw or limitation of exit planning is that it kind of assumes there's one type of buyer for every business and they'll pay a rational valuation. And that's, if you dig deeper, you see that the example of the next door neighbour, there's always a next door business up and down the supply chain who will pay less and more. Yeah,
you're totally right. And you can't blame brokers for not thinking about who. Some brokers might not have the resources because they're spending all their time manually responding to people and sending out NDAs, or it's just too expensive to reach these people in far stretches. For example, we marketed an air conditioning retailing and services business. So they sell air conditioning units and then service them. We sold that in 3 days. We didn't sell it. We marketed it, and the purchaser inquired within 3 days of the business being published. And ultimately, who bought it was a property developer, and that was in regional New South Wales. So that was because we targeted property developers because they're putting in a high number of air conditioning units into their properties. Now, it's worth us saying, it'd be remiss of me not to mention that we never release the name of the business that we have on the platform. Everything's anonymized, everything's confidential. Yeah. But the best thing about marketing businesses for sale, as in contrast to houses, is you don't actually care what the business looks like in a photo or what street it's on. What you care about is its customer profile, its supplier base, the certainty the business provides, the assets it's got, the cash flow it generates, the profit it makes. And so that stuff can all be marketed to buyers in a way that doesn't...
You don't need the name at the top of that one page. It doesn't make any difference. It's because then it's It's a qualifying procedure or process, and if somebody does inquire, you get the opportunity, whether you're the owner, and not ideally you have an advisor, but it could be an owner doing it themselves. It could be an advisor, and you have the opportunity to say, well, who are you? Right? Tell me a little bit about yourself. This is in a more effective, fully functioning marketplace. There's a bit of two-way, like we're going to get to know each other a little bit, as opposed to just shipping out or selling, and here's everything you could possibly want to know about, a business, its name, its location. And I get why that has happened. That's kind of been, a core part of the process of selling business for the last 15 or 20 years. And I can see why owners just would tear their hair out saying, I'm not going to go through that. I'm not going to put my business on the market because everyone will know. The analogy you drew and split out why it's so different between buying and selling a business and buying and selling a house is really helpful.
Yeah. Like with anything, the fear is worse than the reality. I'm certainly not saying you want your business to be publicly marketed, and you don't. In fact, you want it to be the confidentiality to be preserved entirely. But I'm a 45% shareholder of a manufacturing business that makes brick saws and brick tools, and that we're very proud of. And were we to ever sell it, it's not on the cards at all. But it would be scary because we really care about the team and don't want our suppliers to shorten the terms or whatever it might be. Ultimately, no one's going to find out if they market the business on Resolve.
Yeah, and there's all those things. I just the head spins at what an owner can think could happen if they follow that old model of the businesses for sale. Employees find out, competitors, suppliers. Yeah, it can all go pear-shaped. So it does come back to it's a delicate, nuanced process, but it's something that's got to start. I know you've got some time limitations. I wanted to try to come back to why owners need to think more about exit planning. What I take strongly from today is you're a business owner yourself, and so you get the connection beyond just the obvious and apparent of financial return. So in terms of just putting some of the experience from Resolve into the minds of an owner listening in, do you have a sense of how long you talked about a 3-day sale there. Do you have a sense of how long should or typically takes to get reasonably well prepared and then to go on market and find out whether there are buyers out there? So just the time frame from go to woe.
Yeah, there's not one recipe fits all, but or one size fits all. But if we're talking the majority, let's say a $5 million business, road transport business, interstate. Well, they'd be best served, for example, to let's put it that way, to prepare. In an ideal world, that they would have a 5-year plan and they would prepare the business over 2 years, shifting towards longer contracts, even if it meant lower margin or, what have you, even if the whole customer business wasn't contracted and only a portion of that customer was contracted, just to get some predictability in place, just to get some succession planning happening, to get some work instructions if it's a manufacturing business or what have you. So let's stick with this road transport business. They might have a bulk fuel tank on site to get a long-term supplier contract at a discount to the terminal gate price or whatever that might be. And so there are things you can do over a period of 2 years, which, some things probably only need 6 months to get, some businesses you get everything done in 6 months. But being realistic, you're not going to come in every day and prepare for a sale because this is the task of an organised person. And let's face it, when you're a business owner, you can have the best intentions to be organised, but things come out of the woodwork. So in an ideal world, 2 years to prepare, take 6 months to identify your sale advisor. They might take another 2 months to prepare the information memorandum and then start marketing. And then within 6 months, the buyer will have inquired. Now, we are trying to shorten that process so that you can reach out and theoretically find the right advisor if you don't already have one. And then when the business is on market, we'd expect that within the first 6 weeks, more than 50% of businesses that sell will have received an inquiry from the eventual purchaser. So 6 weeks on the market, 3 months diligence, a month settlement, let's call it 7 months all up, is a pretty good process. The average, according to the Australian Institute of Business Brokers, for successful sales is 12 months.
Right. So so if we just, the last bit we said was 12 months. Once you're actively marketing, you're ready. Preceding that is a period, there was at least 2 or 3. There was just looking at your business from the point of view of a buyer. What can you change to make it easier to sell, and finding a good advisor, because the advisor that takes you through the sale of a $2, $3, $5, $10 million business for an individual or a family, they're going to be pretty close to your closest advisor through that process. So you can't just leave it with anybody. So I think there's years there. That's kind of what I wanted to draw out. It's and it should be years, right? It's
110% of your wealth by and large. But let's be clear, it doesn't have to be years. If you don't have years to sell your business, you can get a sale away inside 12 months and get within 5 or 10% of the. I'm not saying you probably don't even need to discount the business, but we're just talking if you want to maximize your chance to optimize your value, take years. Okay. If you don't have that, sure.
Yeah, so you go harder, you go faster, but you're right. There's always a way, and I guess I'm wanting more owners to take the time it needs, but don't feel like there's no option. So that's fair comment.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Because if you think about it, some buyers might buy a business for 2 or 2.5 or 3 times EBITDA. The business, it's very easy. This is what I think as a business owner is, well, I just run my business for another 3 years and I can sell it for $1 and I'm better off. Yeah, but getting off the throne is the hardest thing to do. And so putting a line in the sand is a good idea. And the thought of shutting down your business, it's easy 3 years away because now you've taken what the sale price would be today. But then people are out of a job, people are out of an economy, there's no legacy, and reflecting on that will be a little more sour. There's certainly things to be proud of if your business shuts down and that's how you retire.
Yeah, and look, it's the years that become, there's probably a nice graph to kind of, represent this, but the closer you get to the back half, the more important those years become as opposed to just the dollars. So, Ed, what about where do you see Resolve in a few years? What's your plans as the founder and CEO and driver of Resolve? What's the next couple of years look like?
Well, the first thing I'd say is founders are batshit crazy, so you always have to take what they say with a grain of salt. And I'm certainly no exception to the rule there. I proved the rule probably. So we're currently going through a capital raise to continue funding our growth and accelerate our growth. The business will be, have positive cash flow in 6 months or so, maybe sooner. So we're in a good trajectory. It's just about what marketplaces. It's win or try, play, catch up. And so we want to convert our current positioning into sustainable market leadership, which is why we're raising capital again. Then that'll continue to allow us to fund, development of the buyer proposition. So enabling buyers to meet other buyers, potentially syndicate a deal, plug in due diligence providers, and then on the other side, extend the hopper up. So people like yourself that may be similarly philosophically minded as myself, work with business owners, encourage them to maybe reassess their options if they started out by selling and the business isn't quite ready and they don't need to sell. Well, just take a year, take 2 years to get the business in place. Step back a couple of days a week. Give yourself a break. Go on a 2-week holiday when it's ready, or a 3-month holiday, because everyone knows if you're a business owner, you can't take a holiday. Even if you're sitting on the beach in Fiji, you're not relaxed. Yeah. So that's where we want to go is to invest in extending the hopper on both the buyers and the sellers sides.
Yep.
So that more people can start to dip a toe into the market, whether they're looking to buy or sell a business. And I suppose the other significant share of the capital raise will go towards awareness. So how do you get awareness without spamming people? Well, above the line advertising and below the line advertising and being creative, I suppose. Yeah,
we know that there's a lot of small business owners who ought to think about this. So yeah, awareness is it's a in education's it's a good game, but it's it's certainly if not a long game. It's you've got to be patient. But I wish you well on that. As a founder, Ed, I just want to wrap up with your you battle the battle every day. What are your inspirations? Where do you draw? Who do you follow in terms of inspiration and motivation? What do you do outside of founding and running Resolve to keep it all real?
Well, at the moment, not much. I'm working 6 days a week, and then the seventh that leaves me to be a parent with my lovely wife. So at some point, once we've completed the raise, I'll try and play catch up, and maybe we'll go on a 5-day excursion somewhere warm. But my inspirations, well, I've got a business partner in the manufacturing business who's an inspiration. We've got different skill sets, and I've continually been impressed and amazed at how he thinks and what he's achieved. So it's I don't necessarily draw inspiration from people that I've never met and from acts that they perform that I've read about in the AFR or the Australian. So for me, inspiration is probably a little closer to home. And I also try and scare myself when I'm lying on sitting on death's doorstep. What do I regret, and what am I most
look forward, look back, hey?
Exactly. And so that really is what gets me going. Probably is why I'm an anxious person. So maybe I should stop that and look for inspiration.
No, it's what works for you, Ed. I wish you well with the progress of Resolve in Australia, because at the very beginning of this discussion, you referenced how important it is, not just for the owners, but it is for the broader, for employees and for local economies communities who have got businesses that are big employers in the town. The further you go away from Melbourne, Sydney, the more important these businesses are. And, we have seen and continue to see great developments in terms of employee ownership, cooperatives and mutuals as different ownerships, structures. But ultimately, got that hope that hopper fills at both ends for you. So we get more owners asking what I need to do, and more buyers coming in and seeing the potential of an upside of owning a small business.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree. The Australian dream, they say, is to buy a house. Well, there's no reason it shouldn't be to buy a business. And you use a conveyancer to look at assessing a house. Well, so too you can use DD. So a lack of skills or fear of your lack of experience shouldn't be a reason why you shouldn't buy a business. Nor should the easy excuse of I don't have the funds to buy a business, because it doesn't actually take much cash. You can get business loans, you can get working capital facilities, you can factor the business. You could theoretically get vendor finance with the right vendor if you've got a backable profile and sufficient experience. So there's a number of ways you can get it done, and you can partner. And so I suppose people like you, Resolve, there are many resources out there that can help people to get on the journey, because I'd hate to regret not having a crack. That's all I'm trying to do, and that's all we're trying to do here. Businesses that give more away than less and earlier rather than later to the employees, so that everyone's aligned. And in terms of incentive, do really well and grow faster. And let's just all get after it.
Get after it, Ed. Hey, do you just want to, if people want to contact you, where would they go find you? And also give us the website name just to close this out, please.
Thanks so much. Well, I've enjoyed chatting. It's been great. Thanks, Michael. Resolve is the name of the business. Resolve.com.au is the URL or the website. And through there, they can submit a contact us form. There's a vendor form if you're thinking of buying. Submit a contact us and tell us what you want to see or what you don't like about this website, or ask some questions. There's no dumb questions in my world. I mean, my email is ed@resolve.com.au, and I'm very approachable. So, don't hold back any way you want to get in touch.
Get you on LinkedIn as well, hey?
Yes, please get me on LinkedIn. That's my preferred method, actually.
Yeah, all right. Go well, and thanks so much for your time, your input, and your interest, Ed. It's been really helpful, and I thank you very much.
Oh, Michael, thanks for your time. Great to be on Small Business Banter. That's fantastic.
Good stuff, Ed.
See ya.